Hey guys, it is Chad from the Teach Better team, and I'm here with the dynamic duo, Jennifer and Hans Appel, the power couple of culture itself in the classroom. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing
Good.
awesome. Yeah.
Good day. Yeah.
So they both just moderated an amazing chat on building an anti-racist culture through empathy and kindness in your classroom. So how are you guys feeling after the chat tonight?
Feel great.
I think it was good. Yeah.
I think there was so much good discussion that was happening all over the place. And it was just neat to see, like, you know, when we create a forum like that to really have a dialogue, you know, people can really get vulnerable, you know, and have civil discourse and have, you know, some real meaning and meat to the conversation.
Right.
I really appreciated there was a couple people that didn't feel comfortable answering one of the questions or a couple of the questions. And so they literally just sat out and said, you know, I don't have enough information to even be able to give a great opinion here, a great thought. And I thought that is just such an awareness that's just so cool.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
those reflective moments are so important for adults and students alike, right? And I think providing the platform, you know, Jeff Kaplan is watching right now, and he just said, you know, it was an amazing and difficult chat. And something that's 1,000% true, I think, is that the difficult chats are the ones that we have to have right now at this moment in time. And
Absolutely.
I think you alluded to that. You alluded to that in some of your questions, right? So like, how do you build this culture in your classroom where those difficult chats become not so difficult, right? So what kind of tips or tricks do you have in terms of building that sort of culture in your classroom so you can have those more difficult conversations so that you can model anti-racist practices as a teacher and things like that?
I would say one thing that I noticed a couple times is people kind of struggling with that idea of nice versus kind, right? And it's the same thing as sympathy versus empathy. And really, like, getting down and understanding those words, I think, is super huge. Nice is, you know, very reactive, right? It's you know, I'm going to do something good, but I'm not going to go out of my way. Whereas I think kindness is a whole nother level. It requires us giving up something, right? It's a sacrifice in some way. We have to go out of our way. And so I think that's a huge distinction. Obviously, empathy is, you know, really being able to, you know, walk in another person's shoes, maybe side by side, and you know, experience their feelings on some level.
Yeah. And I think people were mixing up empathy and sympathy
A little bit,
you know? And so I think empathy is a whole different conversation than sympathy, right? I'm not going to feel sorry. I'm going to understand a different perspective. I totally don't agree with it. And I'm going to tell you why I don't agree with it, but I'm going to at least understand that you have this different perspective. You know what I'm saying?
And the thing I love about Mastery Chat is you get so many different perspectives. Like, there's so many different people that are coming in that have different thoughts. And it's like, man, I just feel like with every answer that I was reading, I was growing. And so I can only imagine that's how everybody else is feeling.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely love, we need to put that on a sticker or something. Like, you can, like, nice is, I love that, like, nice versus kind, like idea, right? Like, I can be a nice person and feel bad for you, right? But my kindness is what's going to cause me to act. My kindness is going to cause me to fight with you, fight beside you, speak out, and put myself, my privilege on the line in certain situations, right?
Absolutely.
I absolutely love that, right? So you can be nice without being kind, right? And you don't always have to be sympathetic to be kind. You can be, you know, because sympathy doesn't get us a lot of places, right? Empathy is what sort of irks us into action, right? Like, and so I love that. That's absolutely, that's gold right there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think nice doesn't cost us anything, right? It's easy.
That's a great way to put it.
Know?
It's a safe way. It's a safe way to be like, I'm a nice person. I feel bad for people, right? Versus I'm kind. I act on my empathy. I act on, you know, when I see injustice or when I see inequity or whatever that is.
Well, I think that's one of the things that white people are learning right now is it's not good enough just to be, you know, not racist, right? That's being nice. kind is really going that extra step and becoming anti-racist. Like, I'm going to fight for my Black and brown friends, right? That's a whole nother level.
Yeah, Charmaine Bertrand, when her and I were talking, I brought this up a lot of times, but it really made me think. He's like, and she actually said, you can read, you can learn, you can feel all you want, but what we need is for you to be willing to put your white privilege on the line. Are you willing to put that in danger, right?
Absolutely.
Like, because that's what we all have to do. And I think we have to model that. And some of the questions tonight, I think, alluded to sort of modeling that in our classroom. So if there was one question tonight that you think that you were really glad you added in, what do you think was your like top question for the night?
You know, I would actually flip it, because there was one question that we had about, you know, how would it feel to be in an anti-racist class? I would actually have liked to change that question and have asked more like, how would you know that you're actually teaching in an anti-racist classroom? Right. I think that would have been a fun spin. Mm-hmm. You know, because I think some people actually kind of went there with their answers anyways, but
what is it actually like? How do you know you're there? I mean, how do you know when you get there?
How do you know when you've arrived? And or can you arrive? Is it always
something you're working on and striving at? Yeah. Probably you're always working on it. It's like there's never going to be the perfect classroom. I mean, you're always striving to get better. I mean,
right. I mean, right. It's a never-ending journey, because there's always something else you can do to improve. Right. There's always something else you can do to be better, in every sense of that word. So I absolutely agree. A bunch of people are saying they love the chat tonight. You guys did an awesome job moderating it. And it was a difficult topic, guys. Like, it was a crazy difficult topic. But I also think that modeling hosting this chat was a good way to model what us as, let's be honest, white educators can do in our classroom, especially when we're serving minority communities and students and learners of whatever background. So I think not shying away from these conversations is something that came through with me a lot. A lot of people were like, you know what? It goes back to nice versus kind. I was a really nice teacher sometimes early in my career, where I was like, I feel bad for certain students and I see things, but like, I don't want to open up that can of worms. So like, I'm going to fix it and then kind of move on. Where like, as I moved on, I realized that that's not enough. Like, no, you need to like actively do something in your classroom. You have to build the right culture with equity, with character, with kindness. So if I'm a teacher that experienced this and I want to build that better classroom and build that better culture, what are some things I can start thinking about for the fall when I'm bringing kids in and really focusing on those things? Is there anything I can do or our audience can do to kind of start this journey?
Well, and I think one topic that kept coming up was SEL, like curriculums and things like that. And I think that sometimes it's the same of the nice versus kind, sympathy and empathy. I think we think of SEL sometimes as rules. That is not SEL. So that's what we think of, because we think, oh, now we've created these rules. That's SEL. No, it's not. that actually isn't SEL. And so I think that we sometimes get those confused. So I don't want people going into the fall going, oh, I'm doing SEL. And it's like, no, you're not. You're making more rules and you're making more compliancy and you're having people follow. I mean, that's not SEL at all. So SEL is all of those other factors that you need to bring into your room, like character and empathy and all those things. So I think that's a big thing, is like, don't get fooled by SEL being rules. Like, think of it as a much broader perspective than that.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. And it comes back to, you know, Hans, we talk about culture all the time. We literally talked about it for like 20 minutes today during our good method thing. But like, it's so much more than like putting up a, hey, don't be racist on a sign in your classroom and being like, look, I have an anti-racist classroom. I know no one do that. Okay. Like I'm severely being like ridiculous now on purpose to just demonstrate that like, it's so much more than like saying it or just being like, okay, guys, we're not going to accept this anymore. Or I'm going to put a sign up. But it's the same when you're building any culture. And one of the things that I really liked about tonight's chat is you didn't just focus on like you have to do these things with anti-racism. A lot of it was like, there are holistic things you can do in your classroom. Okay. There are holistic things you can build into your classroom with a culture of love, support, kindness, and empathy. There are things you can do to squash these things out because the culture won't let it breathe in the first place. Right. But if, like you said, Jen, like just doing an SEL curriculum and going through the videos or putting a poster on the wall or saying that at the beginning of the year, that's not enough. Like, how are you embodying it? How are you letting your students embody it, right?
Yeah, and I think, it really is about kind of putting that lens up and seeing everything you're doing within that intentionality, right? So right. I saw a couple people tonight that were talking about what's on your bookshelf in your classroom. Right. Who are the authors? Who are you actually like putting in front of your students as people to role model and look up to and learn from? All of those little bits really add up, I think, to what impacts kids. And like you said, it's not just what you hang on the wall or what you say. It is actually your actions and the way that you model how you set up and structure your classroom.
Right. 1,000% agree. 1,000% agree. So this actually reminds me, I love the fact that like examining your materials and stuff like that. My wife's actually an editor for a textbook company, and she was looking at this new ELA text, and she looked at like all the short stories in the text, and there was very little diversity in this first draft. And like, so we've been talking like, why are there, why is there such a lack of diversity here? Like, how is this not being represented? And that's from like a publishing company standpoint, right? But as a teacher, if you're curating materials, you need to look at it from that same lens, right? Like, am I exposing, am I only talking about white guys as scientists in history, right? Am I only talking about like the whitewashed history that's just in our textbook that was printed 15 years ago? Or are we having actual conversations? Are we talking about other contributions and inventions and authors from multiple cultures, multiple vantage points to kind of broaden that? So I think that's a really great place to start.
Well, and I mean, as I'm a little bit of a rebel, but as a language arts teacher, I refuse to use the curriculum that the district bought because it wasn't. I'm not trying to be. It's just, I said, they're like, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I got in a lot of trouble. And I was like, no, like it doesn't have diversity. All the stories were from the last curriculum we adopted like 15 years ago. Like none of this is accurate. None of this is going to help my students. So why would I put a workbook in front of them that isn't going to do anything for them?
But that's
helping, trying to fix the problem instead of, I'm just because I'm told what to do. And so I'm going to do it. And it's like, no, I'm not going to put up with that. I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying?
And I would argue that's actually showing kindness to your students.
Right.
Because you're saying, hey, I'm going to put myself on the line, even though I'm going to get in trouble, even though somebody isn't going to like that I'm using a different curriculum that's not whatever.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I'm going to do what's best for my kids.
Right.
And that ultimately is what matters.
Yeah. And that's modeling. That's modeling for your students, for the community, for other teachers. Like I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's fighting the good fight that we all need to right now. And I think that's a perfect example of anti-racism. You getting uncomfortable, you putting your privilege on the line, you're going to whoever you need to talk to and going like, listen, I'm sure this is a great curriculum, but like there's zero diversity in here. And we need, Megan Wells just said, our walls need to reflect our students, not
totally
us.
Agree.
And I love that quote, right? Our classrooms, the culture we build, the instruction we provide needs to model the students that we have, not ourselves or our ideas. And I think that's really that's hugely powerful if you think about a student-centered classroom, right?
Well, my walls are blank. Like I start the year with, no, I'm not kidding. Yeah. Like my walls are completely blank. I have 2 little hashtag things on at the top, and that's it. Like my kids decorate my walls all year. There is no, I don't put anything on the wall because it's not about me. Oh, I do have one poster that talks about eating grandma and there's no comma. Anyways, that's an English teacher humor. I did put that one up, but that's all.
Some leave humor.
A little humor with the comma. That's all. But other than that, I mean, I basically don't put anything on the wall and my kids decide what goes up there. Does it look perfect? No, but it looks like them. That's what matters. And when I taught leadership, I was in charge. We had bulletin boards all over our hallway and I was in charge of them. And people get frustrated because they're like, oh, they're not perfect. And I'm like, yeah, but a kid did them. That's the whole point. Like it should reflect them, not me. It shouldn't be all cut out and pretty like I look. It should look like, well, I guess not pretty, sorry. Like I want it to look. It should look like the kids want it to. It should represent them and what they're interested in. Because they have a voice. We should let them use it. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Tracy Browder, who we all love, we all get to talk to her and hang
Tracy's
out with
a
her.
rock star.
She is. Tracy, I'm glad you're watching. Absolutely. So she said textbooks are often extremely not representative of kids who are held accountable for the assessments and their performance that does not reflect which they cannot connect with. So I've actually seen this on assessments, right? Like the names that are used in word, like as a science teacher, but I've seen it in math books and in other books, like the random names they use are not culturally relevant to the students or the situations or the scenarios that they're picturing. Like, and if the students can't see themselves in that learning, like how are they supposed to like connect those dots, right? So if you're, and that's a good cautionary tale, right? If you're a teacher, I'm going to take the book, whatever questions that they put in here and just make the copies and give them to you without doing like a little bit of an audit first. Like, are you assessing your students on something they can't connect with? Like, that's a great question to ask, right?
I was talking to a Black friend of mine recently, and he said that growing up all the way K through 12, the only person that he ever saw in any literature or anything from a classroom was Martin Luther King. And I thought, wow, that is a powerful statement. I mean, obviously, it's probably obvious to every Black person watching right now, but to a white person, when he said that to me, I was like, wow, we got to do a lot better here, people.
A lot better.
Well, I think we have to correct for a lot of mistakes that have been happening for the last 80 to 400 years, honestly. But like a lot of mistakes that have been happening for the last 150 years in the educational system, right? So like some of these curriculums have just been recycled and whitewashed over the last so long. Like we literally need to like tear them down and rebuild them from a culturally diverse lens, right? And that's not going to happen overnight, but it doesn't mean that we as teachers can't help kind of think about what we're giving our students access to so they can see themselves, right? They actually did a study about this with science, and they took a bunch of elementary school teachers and elementary school students, and they had them draw a scientist. They said, hey, little kids, draw a scientist. And they all drew a white guy with white hair in a white lab coat with glasses, right? Like they drew like Beaker from like the, you know what I'm saying? Like they drew Einstein. Exactly. Because that was the image they had of who a scientist was. And then in this study, they actually did a bunch of work with the students on talking about historical scientists who were multicultural, females, and all these other demographics. And after doing all this work, they asked them the same question. They said, draw scientists. And all of a sudden they had more cultures represented, more males and females and all these different races and cultural backgrounds of scientists. So like, it just goes to show you, like, we have to expose our learners and our students to themselves in the history, in the science, in the math. We have to expose them so that they can see themselves and value the content more, right?
And I think it's going to be really important for us, especially as we kind of shift back into school starting this fall, to really hold each other accountable. You know what I mean? We talk a lot in our literature about accountability partners and finding that person that's going to say, all right, Chad, you know, like, does your classroom look like what you said you wanted it to look like this year? You know, because it's easy to fall back in patterns. And I think we need, you know, people that we can really count on to say, okay, I'm going to push myself and I'm going to push you also.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that.
And I remember a few years back, and this is a little bit off topic, but it relates back to the same thing. I remember a few years, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. And Hans and I were running a GSA club. and Gay Straight Alliance, if those of you that don't know what that is. And we were running that club at our school. And I remember a few of my girls came to me and they were non-binary. And so they said their pronouns were they, their, them. And so they were using that in their writing and they were saying they instead of she or he. And their English teachers were all marking them down on their papers because they were using the wrong pronouns. And it was like, no. So I did I sat down the entire English department and I taught them like, here's all the pronouns. Here's how, like, what this means, how you use them. It's okay. Like I'm going to educate all of you on how to use this and what this is doing to your students by telling them no, And so I think those are the kind of things we have to do. Like we have to sit down with each other and go, no, this isn't okay. Mm-hmm. Like we have to change.
Yeah, I think it goes the same for like attacking a student for how they say something or pronounce something, right. Based on how like their culture or their background or what they hear at home, right? I've literally heard teachers like scold students for how they say something. And, this comes back to the conversation about like, what are you assessing? Are you assessing how they say it? Or are you assessing the ideas that they're bringing to the table? Are you valuing them as a human and as a person and as a speaker right now? Or are you just attacking them based on vernacular that they're deciding to use based on their cultural background? Because like one of those things makes you look like a really bad person and you don't want to look that way, right? Oh man. So I don't want to keep you guys all evening, even though you got a couple more hours than I do. It's a little later here than you are. However, I'd like to talk about some just kind of closing thoughts on either the chat or like, what would you like? And I'd like both of you to answer this separately because I think that has value. If you could, as people reflect on the chat tonight and reflect on this difficult conversation and reflect on this difficult topic, what are some actions of kindness or plans for building kindness into their classroom that they can start taking now or thinking about now to be successful in the fall, to really start making some of these changes? What would be your number one tip?
You can go first. That'll give me more think time.
Yeah, I mean, boy, for me, kindness starts with, going out of my way to lift other people up. And so, whether you're an adult and you're lifting up peers, whether you're teaching your kids to lift up one another. I was just having a conversation with somebody today about this exact thing of, let's actually teach kids how to find the strengths and the amazing superpowers that everybody in the classroom has. And so I think, that really lifts self-esteem when other people recognize, what I'm good at, right? And acknowledge it. And I think, back kind of within that anti-racist lens, we haven't always done that for Black people. And I think it's time to start, really being able to identify, for each other in the classroom, help kids to see that in each other and to see what's really special about every single person in that room.
And I think the kindness comes to where pointing out to people like, this isn't okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think you're showing kindness by saying, no, we can't do that anymore. I was showing kindness to my students by saying, this curriculum is not okay. Like, there's not enough diversity. There is not what these kids want. No, I'm not going to do this. So I'm showing kindness to them by not doing something that we're supposed to do. So I think you're showing kindness by pointing out things that maybe shouldn't be happening. And that's kindness to everyone in the situation because you're saying this is not okay. This shouldn't be happening. Yeah. And especially as adults, we're worse. Like the kids are pretty good about stuff. Like it's the adults that are a lot worse about things. So we need to point that out to each other. Like
I'll add one more that I really think we need to be talking to our kids and seeking out student feedback daily. More so now than ever because of COVID, because of everything that they've been through over the last 6 months, probably before they're actually back in some sort of real school-like environment. We need to be checking in with them. We need to be seeing what their experience is. And that relates back to all of our conversation tonight in Mastery Chat. Are we really, seeing that everybody is being seen, valued, and heard, right? I think that's huge.
Yeah. Great questions. I don't even have anything else to add. I think those are great steps. And it takes a lot to shut me up.
We did it. We did it finally.
Well, I want to thank you guys. You had an amazing chat tonight. Both of them had books come out like literally in the last month. So real quick, will both of you share your books and where people can get them? I would love that.
Yeah, my book just came out today. It's called Award-Winning Dog. It's about my dog, Maya. And it's just about her discovering kind of who she is and being okay with not being, what we think of as, the perfect achievement. And that she's a good person and she finds her way kind of through some other animals and things like that. So it's really like K2, but we found a lot of ways we can use it in middle school too. So it's kind of, it seems to span quite a few grades. So
I'm telling you, middle schoolers love to be read to.
I read through mine all the time. Right? I read through mine
They'll
all the time.
say that they don't like it. It's kid stuff.
No.
You start reading them Good Night Moon or whatever, like they're all over. Like it doesn't matter. Like
so true.
It is so true. Yeah.
And then, my book came out about a month ago. It's called Award-Winning Culture. And it's really like a school-wide framework for how to build culture and climate. And super excited to have that out. And, I think both of us are super passionate about this kind of work. So if people are listening, if people are wanting to know more about how to create exceptional culture and climate in your classroom, in your building, then reach out to us. We'd love to help.
Absolutely. We love having you guys on the team. We love all the work that you do. They are like literally my go-to when I have culture questions or when I have questions about any of that stuff. So I can't recommend that enough. Absolutely. So thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic evening and thanks for a fantastic chat tonight.
Thanks for having us,
everybody.
Jen.